people feel more heard by an AI than corresponding human therapists.
You've said something in a therapeutic interaction that there's a duty to report.
AI empathy is really about multimodal AI being able to identify and respond to emotional cues in the inputs.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Thursday, August 1st, 2024, and you are watching the Daily AI Show live. Today, we're talking about a topic that's been making waves in the AI community and beyond, particularly with the launch of Friend. Is AI better at empathy than humans? So with me today, I have Andy, Jyunmi, and I'm Beth. So here's the situation with this topic today. Recent studies have shown that in certain situations, AI is being rated as more empathic than human professionals. And this raises a bunch of questions. Like, what does this mean for fields like customer service, where human professionals are far more expensive, right? Like we've talked about that companies are investing in AI to perform those tasks. Healthcare, mental health support. Like, are we on the brink of a new era where AI becomes our go-to for emotional support? And perhaps most importantly, what does this say about us as humans, that is something that is even a thing right now? So we're going to look at the technology behind artificial empathy. We're going to discuss the potential benefits and drawbacks and explore what this could mean for businesses and our society moving forward. So, Andy, I'm particularly interested in hearing your thoughts about this. What's your initial reaction to these studies that say that AI is outperforming humans? And were you surprised? Are you surprised?
No. And here's why. AI empathy is really about multimodal AI being able to identify and respond to emotional cues in the inputs. So in particular, voice recognition and emotional qualities that are detected in that is one way that an AI can determine what the emotional state of the speaker is. But it can also add facial cues because, our face is very expressive of emotion, right? So if there's a live video feed in the interaction with an empathetic AI assistant, for example, it's looking at lots of different cues. Now, a human therapist who's trying to be an empathetic and supportive assistant may also be identifying emotional cues in that. Or even your friends may, be responding to emotional cues. And our brains are designed in a way that AI's brains are not, to have short-circuited reactions to signals that come through these emotional cues. So emotion exists as a rapid response thing. And I'm not speaking from science here. I'm speaking from my understanding of it. So take it with a grain of salt. But emotions are reactive processes within the human. And so now we imagine an AI that's identifying and qualifying its responses based on the emotional state that it determines in view. And it's doing that without ever the capacity of being triggered by those cues. So now imagine the other side of the equation, which is the human person who's interacting with you, or the subject in this case. That person is programmed to respond to the emotional indicators that you're throwing out there, and so you get triggered by those things. Let's imagine a world in which in your primary relationships, which often have the potential to trigger you based on issues in your past or prior experiences in general, especially those that were applied to you in the context of your sort of nuclear family of origin. At a very young age, you're programmed to react to certain situations or interaction types. a human that you're interacting with is overlaying in its responses to you a lot of stuff. There's a term of art in psychology called projection, right? You receive a bunch of stuff, but then now you're throwing back your own stuff. Well, an AI can be more empathetic by being able to identify these things and respond appropriately without ever being triggered by those things in the way that humans are programmed. So I'm coming down very firmly on the side that AI can actually be more empathetic, at least more positively empathetic, in the sense that it can identify and respond to the emotional qualities of your outputs without overlaying its own emotions on top of that. And that's the key.
Absolutely. And it goes to what we were talking about yesterday as well, that AI can function on more tracks than humans can, right? I do think that one of the things that I noticed in the studies was that humans who don't know that they're talking to an AI and then are informed about that they've been talking to an AI experience it's a less long-lasting empathy. But isn't that true of all studies? When you trick a human, you ask what their first impression is, and then you reveal that there were studies on medicine. So if you knew that you were taking Advil, then and you were very satisfied with your pain relief. If you didn't know that you were taking the generic, you were very sad with the pain. You were very satisfied with the pain relief. If you knew that you were taking the generic, you were not as satisfied as you were if you took Advil, right? So that's not the quality of the Advil. That's the quality of your association with Advil. And I wonder how much what we're seeing in this is the experience of people actually feeling heard, sympathized with, empathized with, all of those things without knowing specifically that it's coming from an AI, or in a situation where they have a strong enough need that they don't care that it's coming from an AI. Part of the effect is that I could get my thing solved right now. I could get the information immediately. I could not wait on hold for 45 minutes to speak with somebody, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not opposed to the position that AI is more empathetic, but I think for me it's more specific. Like we've seen in other use cases, AI at this point is fantastic at solving problems, completing tasks, or taking advantage of that, solving problems for that low-hanging fruit. I think the more complexity that's involved, you need more experience with it. And I'm sure AI can be, expanded to have more variables or more options and things like that, how it can respond and things like that. But I think right now, what we're seeing is this reaction in these studies is the concept of, people feel more heard by an AI than corresponding human therapists, is because we're in an epidemic, a mental health epidemic for loneliness and interaction and things like that, which I'm sure, was exasperated by the by COVID and pandemic things. And so I think what the symptom can be easily solved by implementing AI, because there isn't enough mental health practitioners out there. I know lots of people that I hear this story over and over. It's it takes me months before I can schedule with a therapist, and they have to go through all of these hoops and have to climb such a high cliff or mountain to try and get the help that they need. So an empathy AI or a therapy AI makes sense if it can handle some of those immediate needs, right? It solves this. It solves this for a symptom, but not for the disease. So while I do think AI is a better tool to handle a lot of those immediate needs, and especially things that have been growing in the populace globally to help, stem that tide, I think AI as a better replacement for a therapist is not going to be the case, especially since we need to solve the larger issue of what is causing all of this loneliness, what is causing all of these mental health issues, right? So it doesn't solve a systemic issue; it just solves that immediate need, and I think that's where it's going to fit in, right? Mm-hmm. If I just need to vent about my day or whatnot, and I have no one to talk to about that, but I have my AI who can be very understanding, respond, and all those kinds of things, fantastic. But if I'm suffering from clinical depression, that AI is not going to solve that problem, or why everybody, in the country is suffering from some form of depression. That AI is not going to solve that. And so I think that's where there's a clear separation between the two.
Yeah, the AIs will certainly not have pharmacological, responses for you. And in many cases, a therapist, and we're talking really about the sort of mental health therapy space right at the moment, but there are lots of other applications of emotion recognition, in AI we'll talk about. But in therapy, I agree with you that, there has to be a broader range of responses than just validation. One of the things that I've found sort of differentiating about different therapists that I've been involved with over the course of time with couples therapy or with individual therapy is I get very sort of fatigued with a therapist who's simply just validating everything that I say, right? I want a therapist who can really intervene and interject, where I'm clearly following a path that's not effective and, and aligned with the objectives of, resolving whatever issues that I'm talking about. So empathetic AI may be very, very good at detecting and coddling, if you will, but is it going to be as sophisticated in its understanding of the range of human foibles, shall we say, and able to intervene with those foibles in a way that's constructive and gets you to arrive at a better model in your own mind of how to interact with humans and maybe with other AIs that you're interacting with, so that you don't run afoul of some of the potholes that we run into interactively with other humans that end up with us being disappointed with the nature of that relationship.
So I find that really interesting, Andy, because I think that that the longevity of a relationship with a therapist, right, creates some of that foundation. My therapist certainly is quite blunt when I am going down a path that is not recommended. But I also think that that's probably true with the AI as well. So what I'm thinking now is that these studies are often based on like a study, an experiment. So your interaction with the AI is relatively new, or for this particular thing. One of the studies that looked at college students was having them use the now defunct chatbot Replica with a K. And so they were using that for a month, right? And the study was looking at, like, they felt more adjusted to college. They, felt more confident, more welcome there, that sort of thing. But that was a long-term relationship, right? The what I'm thinking is that, like, I find talking with ChatGPT through the voice very helpful to get my ideas out, that sort of thing. Because it transcribes while it's saying it, and it is validating, right? So it's very nice to be talking about an idea and hear, wow, that's really interesting. Could you tell me more about blah, 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 right? It's very effective at eliciting the details of an idea from me. But when I approach for empathy, which I don't do very often, but frankly, like I had a bad night on the stage, on improv stage. I felt like I let my team down, and I was like, all right, I have to drive home anyway. Hey, I want to talk to you about a situation. I feel like I let my team down. And then we had an empathic conversation. I was not expecting it necessarily. I just was like, hey, I need to talk. And I'm driving and I can talk to you, so that's fine. But I already had a relationship with ChatGPT outside of needing empathy in this context. I just sort of feel like that may be part of why we're getting the immediate bump and then not getting a longevity kind of thing, because the longevity in studies is not there.
I want to shift over to the risk side of empathic AI. And just this week, the EU's AI Act is going into effect. Now, this is the first very broad regulation of AI that's been instituted in the world. And of course, it applies to all of the major frontier models and everything else over time, because they're being used in the EU just as readily as they're being used in the United States and in other countries. So just as with the case of GDPR, as it applies to e-commerce in the United States, there's borderless e-commerce and there's borderless AI. So EU's regulation of this space is going to lead the way. Now, EU's AI Act has a general prohibition on the use of emotional recognition technologies in workplaces and schools. And what they're aiming to do is to target applications of this capability of AI to identify the human's emotional state for monitoring and controlling purposes. And there will probably be an exception in that body of regulation for more beneficial applications of emotion recognition, such as we're talking about, which is like an emotional, empathetic AI assistant that's designed to help you with empathic conversations. But it's very interesting that they understand that AI can detect human emotions and use that information. And so EU is specifically prohibiting that in workplaces and schools. Another sort of side point to this is I just want to share with everyone that if you go back in sort of the history of natural language processing and speech generation systems, go back to Stephen Hawking and his voice implementation from the computer. It was completely emotionless, right? It was so monotonous. Everyone's heard that kind of characteristic computer voice. Well, all of us are now about to experience something that goes way beyond the kinds of voice interactions that we've experienced before, as ChatGPT's new voice mode, which is very adept and very sophisticated in its identification of and use of human voice cues that are emotional based. Like and by the way, there's a great article that's published just today by Ethan Mollick in his One Useful Thing, newsletter, where he presents a demonstration of the new ChatGPT voice mode talking to the new Siri AI. Okay, now the new Siri AI is and he'll explain that in there if you go see One Useful Thing, a really great newsletter that comes out from Ethan Mollick, who's focused on the educational marketplace as a professor at Wharton, by the way. But he speaks more broadly about it. but there's some really good demonstrations of just how incredibly smooth, fluid, and empathetic the ChatGPT 4.0 based voice interaction mode is now. Now, it's not generally available. There are only a very few people who have access to it. I haven't been given access to it yet. None of us on the show have, but listen to those examples and you'll see where we're going. And it's going to be much more engaging for you and much more satisfying to talk to that kind of AI than it has been to date, even using voice with Pi or with other services. And I'll mention some of those in a bit. I asked Perplexity, what are the services that are offering empathetic voice interaction with AIs?
Absolutely. There were also, I was watching some videos of people who also have access to that. And like they were taking a breath. Like one of them was saying, count from 1 to 100 as fast as you can. And there was a little misunderstanding initially, like that didn't go particularly smoothly initially. But it took a breath.
Like, I'm done.
Right. Like 100. Hey. But it literally took a breath, and the person who was having the interaction was like, no, without breathing. Like, you don't have to breathe. Yeah. Just go and count as quickly as possible.
That's right. The new voice mode does have imitation breathing in it.
Yeah.
To be more like a human speaking to you.
Yep. But like that's clearly something that's been hammered, because the response was, okay, I'm going to do this, but I'm going to breathe like any other human. Right.
Yeah. So let me mention a couple of services out there that go beyond Pi, which we've recognized, for some time as being trained to be a little more human-like and empathetic in its responses, and it has a voice interaction mode. Pi from Inflection got absorbed by Microsoft, but it's Pi is still out there, and many people use it as an empathetic companion. But here's one called Morphcast for ChatGPT. It uses ChatGPT as the underlying large language model. It integrates emotion detection technology to provide personalized and empathetic interactions, tailors responses based on the user's emotional state, creating a more human-like conversation experience. It recognizes and responds to the user's real-time emotional state, offering a unique and engaging dialogue that mirrors human empathy and understanding. So Morphcast is one. The other one's called Processica. The Processica AI companion combines advanced AI with empathetic interaction to create a unique user experience. It is designed to provide a safe space for expression and adapt to individual communication styles. It builds intricate user profiles, remembers past dialogues, and adjusts its communication style for empathetic resonance. And that, I thought that term was very interesting as I read that. The whole idea of resonance is, okay, you're expressing an emotional state, and I, as a human, am reacting and resonating with that emotional state. In fact, I'm kind of embodying it. That's what triggering means, is you're inducing in me the state that you are generating with your full bandwidth communication. And that can be too much for some people, right? Highly sensitive persons don't like the expression of emotion, and we try to avoid that. So this idea of having a resonant, empathetic AI that learns about you over a significant amount of time, and Processica is claiming to, have a longitudinal understanding of your dialogue and your, emotional expressions, and adjusts itself to be responsive to that. That's really where we're going. And the quality of the communication is going to be really good. So, we're in for a really rich experience, I think, with empathetic AI going forward.
I think this is a great point to bring up with both comments made by Cisco and Justin in the chat. And they're talking about some of the responsibility and who that responsibility falls on if something terrible happens, right? So you mentioned this company that is producing a product to help, an AI learn about you and being able to respond to you and all those kinds of things and to build up this relationship. Well, what if a flaw, hallucination, or, glitch, issue, or anything like that built into it, and someone who's in a suggestive or trusting situation makes decisions that aren't necessarily healthy, right? Or for like the example that was given, what happens with the automated car when it gets into a car crash and it ends in casualties or fatalities or anything like that? Who is responsible? And I know, as I understand it, we don't have any examples of that, right? If there was a specific physical flaw in the manufacturing of the vehicle, then maybe the manufacturer of that vehicle, could be responsible. If there was outside action like other drivers, or faulty infrastructure like a bridge or a road or things like that, something happens there, then that's where that, responsibility or blame gets put on. And then a lot of times it's all put on the operator of the vehicle themselves. So there's a lot of different things that we have to factor when discussing how we want to implement or release this to the masses. Right now, before a new drug is released, we have to go through all of the drug trials and testing and things like that before it can be released. And usually that only by prescription. Right? So I don't think we have the systems in place to properly test, evaluate, and have a long enough track record to even know how this is going to affect things on the long term. Now, do I think that we should stop going down that path? Absolutely not. It is a need that needs to be filled. Now, this may or may not be the right way to fill that need or try and solve those larger issues that are causing the need. But if we don't continually to develop along that path, it becomes a head in the sand kind of thing, and we try to ignore it, and that's never been a good solution for handling one's problems.
Right. So Jen just there's a big conversation happening in the chat. If you're listening to this, please go and check out the chat as well. Who would AI report to? Right. So, like, if a therapist understands that there is problem, you've said something in a therapeutic interaction that there's a duty to report. If you've said something in a scholastic academic interaction, there's a duty to report. But yes, who does AI report to? And is this the same thing? Gwen was asking, is this the same thing as when the brakes give out on your car, Jyunmi? The question is, the AI is not regulated in the same kind of way as car manufacturing, right? Like that just hasn't been something that has been decided by courts. The oversight, the White House just released the statement from the Department of Commerce that they're recommending that it be monitored, but at this point, not like mandated to hit certain benchmarks, unlike the EU, right? So it's very interesting, and it does seem like it is moving. It like it's going to happen. It is being released. Whether it's a good idea to be released or not, it is being released. And that's the same question with, like, is it a good idea to release a 405 billion parameter model just for free and anybody can do anything with it? that's a question. And in fact, the White House statement came out and was like, yeah, no, we think this is a better option. I'm paraphrasing, obviously. But the like, you can ask, is it a good idea? But we also need to take into consideration whether it's a good idea or not, it's happening. So we need a response, or we need awareness.
Right. And just to point out on the who does the AI report to in that kind of situation, that kind of speaks towards some of the things that the EU AI Act is protecting against that Andy was talking about. By removing, emotional AI from workplaces and schools, that's to stop false identification, false reporting. And I think that's where that key is.
Yeah, this causes me to remember that one of the principles that I applied in my career to my own sort of worldview of how the corporation ought to work in an organizational behavior sense is that there's a kind of in my mind, a code of professional conduct. And that conduct is driven by the need to remove emotional content from the workplace. That is, if somebody's triggered and they're, screaming and off the rails, that's not conducive to good professional productivity for anybody. It can be completely disruptive, especially if it's coming from leadership. So, becoming more emotionless, if you will, is one of the things that, one tries to do, I think, in that scheme of operation. And there's a counterpoint to that, which is, oh no, humans are humans and they need to express themselves. And, it's quite all right to be emotionally expressive in the workplace. But that wasn't the way I was brought up. In the professional context, you want to remove emotion. So I can understand how the EU AI Act is saying, let's not allow AI to do emotion recognition for monitoring the level of emotional behavior among your employees in the workplace or in academia. So education and workplaces are the two places that they specifically proscribe from the use of emotional recognition systems. That's inconsistent with my view that, hey, I want a detector. I want a detector that says, this person that I'm monitoring here, just because I'm listening to every conversation in the entire workspace, this person over here has gone too far. This is way too hot and emotional an interaction, and this is going to be disruptive to good sort of connection among the team and or proceeding and progress, at least in the short term on this day, because everybody's fractured by this experience of emotional interjection. That I think I would like to see that there. And then the question is, who does it report to? If the AI detects, if it could be allowed, like maybe in the United States, it's still allowed. I could do this in the United States because there is as yet no regulation in the United States for the use of emotion recognition systems in a workplace. Wouldn't I want to, as the leader, a benevolent leader, I hope, wouldn't I want to be able to intervene if there's something that's happening that has gotten way too fractious?
Okay, I'm gonna have to push back on this one.
Good,
okay,
good.
All right. Additional monitoring and moral evaluation, emotional evaluation, all of those things take agency away from people, right? And it's a matter of, like you said, who watches the watchers? What happens when, yes, I may be having a bad day and I'm doing my best to keep it off my face in my interaction and I'm in the office. I'm having my one bad day. The AI flags that automatically goes to HR. That's a check on my record. When evaluation comes in, they see, oh, this person's too emotional. It's going to cause long-term effects. We should get rid of them and replace them with somebody else.
No, wait.
No, see, yes, it's a slippery. It's a slippery slope when you try and put those kinds of things on there.
Well, I agree with that, but notification does not equal termination.
Okay, maybe
agency
comes
from
down
the
to
management.
my experience or or people's level of trust of other people, and that might be the more the larger issue is. But I can't trust another organization to be able to make choices for me, right? Not in those kinds of contexts, right? Not something that I have agreed unless I agree to that.
There are certain behaviors in the workplace, Jyunmi,
Yeah,
that management has a responsibility to deter and remedy.
right.
So what I'm talking about is
And those exist.
Allow me to finish my sentence.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay. I'm talking about an AI that detects an outburst that goes way beyond what's permissible according to the rules of conduct in this organization. I'm not talking about, let's monitor so carefully that we're going to evaluate a person based on the range of modest emotional, expressions. I'm talking about the outburst that is really damaging to the conduct of the team. And so there are, you can train an AI to identify things that go above a certain threshold. And it could be volume. It could be as simple as, you got hot on this particular issue because I think it's fear-driven, right? I'm going to say that you're afraid of being monitored.
From experience.
I'm not afraid of being monitored because I think I have better self-control over outbursts and so on. Okay, now Beth, you're up.
Look, I just want to make one last before Beth, you pop in here. Okay, look, it comes down to a fact is, yes, technically it's possible. Yes, an AI could perform this task very well. You're right, for monitoring extreme situations. But whoever is controlling that AI, which is our people, right, which are flawed in themselves, that can be used negatively against somebody for whatever reason they want to. So when we talk about slippery slope, why we talk about monitoring people in general is dangerous because because on multiple levels it breaks personal privacy, privacy protections, just the ability to function with the concept of every move that you're making is monitored and quantified and will be used against you in some manner, right? I understand from the surface, yeah, this sounds like it can solve a particular issue and it'd be a really good tool to use. But just like we are hesitant to put, and I know this is an extreme example, but just like we're hesitant to put AI into weapons, we need to be hesitant about AI to put into things that will monitor or add to control over us.
Right.
And so let me add a couple of points. One is, I see your point of view, and I think that there are mechanisms already in labor relations regulations that govern these issues where a human might take information and make what is an inappropriate and potentially retaliatory or just generally ill-advised step, including termination. So there's recourse for those things. If you've ever worked in a corporation, if you end up as the management team deciding that a single individual or a group of individuals has to be remediated, and that doesn't mean immediate termination. There are certain violations that where you can immediately terminate the person because it goes beyond the pale. But in most cases, what you have to do is you have to put a 90-day remediation program in place in order to follow the laws and regulations that govern employment. So it's not like, there's a Sith that comes down and chops the person's head off when they do it. There's lots of governance that goes on.
That's true. There are rules and regulations. I completely agree. But here's another analogy.
An AI would be transparent about
once you've been labeled. It's just like if If you are convicted of a crime and you go to jail and you go to prison and you are supposed to be rehabilitated, you do your time, and then you come out. You know how hard it is for those individuals to turn around their lives because they have that stigma. If I have a black mark on my record, just for one instance, right, and you go through the remediation process, you go through your 90 days, you're supposed, and everything is good after that, right? I now have that stigma of, oh, I made a mistake one time. I did do the time. I did recover, and I'm now contributing back to the company. But it's back there in the back of the head for management. Oh, well, this happened this one time. This is no longer a lower candidate. So
fair enough, but I had a fairly good memory, and I was in the open workspace with everybody who I worked with, and I'm doing that right now. I make judgments about the individuals who are working around me, and that's going to be assisted by AI in the future. There's going to be evaluative systems out there, and that you're going to expect that the people who are making the final judgments are going to be better balanced than the people. And by the way, there are lots of bad examples of management, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So
I
think
it comes down to just trust. Yeah, that's what it is if you can build that trust, then perhaps it'll be easier to implement. But yes, having the regulation, being aware, but understand, yes, it is going to happen. I agree with that. Yeah.
So I have a couple points about this. One is that in my experience working in organizations, the level of power you have is directly proportional. The level of freedom you feel to express yourself emotionally is proportional to the level of power you have. And while I agree with you, Andy, I am not sure that I think the C-suite is going to monitor themselves with this technology in the same way that they're going to monitor the...
I disagree. And yet you're right that C-suites might choose not to. But there's a thing called 360-degree evaluation that many organizations adopt, and that allows everybody from every direction to evaluate everyone. And I think that's a more enlightened management style than one where there's an autocratic C-suite that doesn't do any introspection, whatever. So I would leave a company that was really like badly organized that way, such that the C-suite was oppressive and unconscious about their own impact on the organizational behavior.
Yeah, and also just willing to receive the feedback, but whether unconscious or not, and maybe it is a more neutral kind of feedback if it comes from the AI that is assessing everything. The other thing that I feel like we really need to bring up in this context just quickly is that AI has documented bias, right? And it is documented that the darker your skin, the more angry you are perceived, right? In terms of just same cues coming out of my face and somebody who has darker skin than me will be perceived differently based simply on color characteristics and physical characteristics, not based on intent. So that really needs to be addressed in this context as well. And I know that I know that the companies who are developing AI are conscious of that and trying to mitigate that. And we don't really know why AI can do what it can do. So that's a tricky thing, right? We're giving it tons of content. Look, it can do these things in response to that. But there is, it's being trained on what they found on the internet. So we've been on the internet. That's not helpful sometimes in terms of nuance. Okay. So I think we're going to wrap it up here. This was a great show. The chat loved the exchange. We're good. I need to say we're good.
Oh yeah. No, it was good. It was a great conversation. I loved it.
Awesome. So please join us tomorrow. We are at thedailyAIshow.com. Sign up for our newsletter. Tomorrow we will be doing our bi-weekly recap show. And this week and last week have been like a ton of things to talk about. So we'll be revisiting those things. And thanks so much. If you're enjoying this, hit subscribe, tell your friends. We're really excited about growing with y'all. And happy Thursday.
Aloha.